let's try a first deck profile from Sir Slobs. So I'm going to be doing Gimmick Puppets. So I think the first thing to note about Gimmick Puppets is they're rubbish. So if you actually want to win, probably not best picking Gimmick Puppets, especially for even locals or anything like that. However, they are pretty cool in terms of the artwork and stuff like that, and I've always had a liking for them. So this is my attempt at actually making them decent. Right, so I suppose we'll start with the monsters, and the first thing is the 3 Dreary dolls. So these are kind of like an engine requirement, if I'm being absolutely honest, and it kind of used to be a lot better in the past. The once per turn is, especially someone from graveyard by banishing another Gimmick Puppet, is still pretty decent, and the locking into just Gimmick Puppets for XYZ has become better because you can just link them off. And again, she's still one of the better Gimmick Puppets, but I think her potency has been lost with time. Then we got 3 of the new one, which is Bisque doll. So Bisque doll is discard 1 Gimmick Puppet in order to special summon her. She has no other restrictions. She's also got a banish from the graveyard effect to stop your opponent from targeting your Gimmick Puppet monsters, which would be much better if it was a quick effect, but still pretty useful. From there we've got 2 Magnet Doll, and again Magnet Doll is one that I think, although it's still a decent Gimmick Puppet, has kind of lost some of its potency again, especially with the speed that the game has now got to. So basically you can special summon Magnet Doll if your opponent controls monsters and you control at least 1 Gimmick Puppet, and I think it's that last bit that really stings, is that you have to control a Gimmick Puppet before you special summon Magnet Doll. So then again, another one of the new ones is Terror Baby, and Terror Baby is one of our 5 normal summons in the deck. When Terror Baby's normal summoned, it can special summon a Gimmick Puppet from the graveyard. It's also got a similar thing to Bisque Doll, where you can banish it from the graveyard and your opponent can't respond to activated effects. Again, I think with both of those banish from graveyard effects, they're kind of a bit lackluster, especially because you're banishing so much stuff with Dreary Doll. Still, it's a very solid addition to the deck and a pretty good extender. So that's the Gimmick Puppets. From now, we've got all the engines that are trying to make this thing rumble. And to begin with, we've got the drivers. So you've got 3 Righty Driver. What Righty Driver does is it can be substituted for any synchro tuner, which is obviously super relevant in a Gimmick Puppet deck. But the main effect is when it's normal summoned, you can special summon a Lefty Driver from your deck. And because it's a tuner, it means you get instant access to Halifabrax or Needle Fibre. I've just butchered that name, but anyway. So then to go along with that, we've got 2 Lefty Drivers. As much as it stings me that we've got to play 2, because it is a bit of a brick. But when it's special summon, you can make it level 2. Again, super relevant in this. And during the turn, apart from when it was sent to the graveyard, you can banish it from the graveyard to add the Righty Driver, which is quite a good loop because you can summon Righty Driver, summon Lefty Driver, and then next turn banish the Lefty Driver to get the Righty Driver back to the hand. And again, these 2, because they're machines as well, can make the Gimmick Puppet Link monster, which can be useful for a follow-up turn if you fail to seal victory from the first opening board. So from there we've got some extenders, which is Gearspring Spirit, and 2 Gizmeks. So Gearspring Spirit's probably a bit less common, but basically you can special summon that if you only control machines in your graveyard. And once per turn you can target a monster on the field and its attack becomes 0. So again, it forces out negates and stuff like that. Gizmek, obviously a bit more meta relevant, is you can banish 8 cards from the top of your deck, special summon it, and you can also pop a card on the field by banishing 3 from your extra deck. Those 2 can't be used in the same turn, so you got to be a little bit careful with how you're doing it. But again, he's a good one for baiting out a pop. From there, we've got a couple of problem solvers. So we've got Gadarla and Gameciel. Most people just tend to run the Gameciel, but I think for the extra 500 and the ability maybe to special summon the Gadarla when the opponent has the Gameciel, I've mixed it up and gone with 1 of each. Again, level 8s is where it's at because we're playing 3 trade-ins, spoiler alert. And then the 1-0 Lion to go with the Needle Fibre package. Onto the magics, or the spells. And we've got 3 rank up magic quick chaos. So Quick Chaos basically just goes from a XYZ monster to a Chaos XYZ monster that's one rank higher. It's a quick play. I mean, again, you could argue that Numeron Force is better because it negates everything on the board. But I think to get damage on board, Quick Chaos is where it's at. And again, really, the whole rank up thing, especially because Gimmick Puppets don't have a searcher for the rank up magics apart from the trap card, which I am not playing against. Spoiler alert. But yeah, you kind of have to play 3 in order to be able to see it, which does result in sometimes you seeing it too often. But that's a risk you kind of have to weigh up, especially when playing Gimmick Puppets. So our drawing engine is 3 trade-ins. And again, it's fairly obvious. Dreary wants to be in the graveyard. Some of the other Gimmick Puppets want to be in the graveyard. Gizmek is another good one to trade in. I've considered running a Lair of Darkness, but it doesn't quite work. And again, you could probably squeeze out some stuff if you were willing to put it in. I running 2 Call by the Grave. Again, I kind of want to put in a third because it's desperate when you Righty Driver or Lefty Driver, I can't remember which one, whichever the normal summon one is, gets hand trapped. It's painful, but you can push through it with some of the other extenders you've got in the deck. So the deck's not super normal summon reliant, which is quite nice. Although if your opponent has seen the play, they'll know exactly when to hand trap you. But yeah, so 2 Call by the Graves, 2 Condolance Puppet, which is one of the newer cards again. It's basically a Foolish Burial on your first turn, and then you send 1, and then you send 1 for every extra deck monster your opponent controls. So if they control 1, you'll send 2 Gimmick Puppets, which will immediately turn Dreary Doll on. And then whilst in the graveyard, you can banish it to target a XYZ Gimmick monster you control, and it becomes unable to be destroyed by card effects. Actually, it's Machine XYZ, sorry, I should say. So that will also affect our Orcust XYZ. Then a bunch of one-offs. I'm playing Monster Reborn, Instant Fusion, and 1 for 1. So each of these are basically an extender. Monster Reborn is pretty obvious. Instant Fusion, again, it's one of those ones where you could argue that now it's only at 1, it's probably worth taking it out, but it's still such a good extender, and Panzer Dragons can be a bit of a problem solver as well. And then the 1 for 1, although it's hand trap bait, it immediately gets access to Needle Fibre should we need it. Then we've got the Foolish Burial and Upstart Goblin. Foolish Burial is pretty obvious, and the Upstart Goblin, obviously 39 card deck and all consistency and all that. And then finally, we're running 3 Infinite Impermanence, which I get this is kind of a budget-esque build, but yeah, so you could swap these out for Effect Veiler. The problem with Effect Veiler is it conflicts with your Gearspring Spirit because that has to control machines in the graveyard. So for our fusions, we're playing the 1 Panzer Dragon. Again, I had considered running Sea Monster Theseus to get you to Halifibrax plays, but I think two fusion targets for 1 instant fusion it's asking too much for the extra deck. And the extra deck is actually pretty tight considering there's a Gimmick Puppet deck. We're then running 3 Synchros. We're running Accel Synchron, Berserker of the Tenyi, and a Borreload Savage Dragon. And again, you could probably cut the Borreload Savage Dragon if you're desperate for it and just use Berserker of the Tenyi. So Accel Synchron, I'll show you the combo at the end, but the Accel Synchron goes, you're basically stepping up into one of your other 2 Synchro monsters. Berserker of the Tenyi is a good problem solver going second, and it can also be some disruption going first. And Borreload Savage Dragon is, it's a bit of a monster in terms of attack, and it's also an Omni negate on legs. So from there we've got our XYZs, which is supposedly the main event. So Giant Grinder ×2. He's probably the best Gimmick Puppet XYZ. So during your main phase 1, which has caught me out a few times, you can detach and pop a card on the field, a special summoned card on the field, but that isn't once per turn, so you can pop twice, which is pretty good for ball clearing. But again, going first, it's nonsense, which is why we're running the kind of synchro element in the back. Then 1 Puppet of Strings. He's kind of your beat Stick, but again, he's become much like the rest of them, much less potent with time, and he's only really good when you combine him with the rank up card. So if you need 3000 beta, then he's your man. But if you've got the rank up spell, then you can also put a lot of damage on board. Then we've got a couple of generic rank 8s. So you've got number 23, Lancelot. And I like Lancelot a lot. You don't really see him played that often, but it can attack your opponent's monster directly while it has extra energy material. If it inflicts battle damage, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls and destroy it, so it's removal. Once per turn, during either player's turn, when a spell, trap, or another monster's effect is activated, detach one XY0 from this card and negate it. So, unfortunately, the last effect is not optional, so he will be negating the first card that your opponent does, but if you can put Savage Dragon and also a Lancelot on board, it can be pretty potent in terms of they'll have to force out the first thing. They're definitely losing a card from Lancelot. The problem with it is that when it comes back around to your turn, you will also lose a card from Lancelot if you don't get rid of it, or just leave it on board in terms of don't do anything, which can slow the game down a little bit. But still, I think it's worth an addition. And then one Dingirsu. And again, he's pretty useful in terms of you can still go to him if you use the Gimmick Puppet XY Link Monster, because the Link Monster locks you down to machine XYZs for the rest of the turn. And then we've got 2 targets for the rank ups. So we've got Chaos number 15 and Chaos number 40. So that's the Giant Grinder or Giant Hunter and Puppet of Strings or Puppet of Dark Strings. So Giant Hunter's very similar to Giant Grinder in terms of it can pop. Unfortunately, it is once per turn, but it can kill anything. So it's not just monsters like the Grinder. Dark Strings is a bit of a weird one. So number 40, there we go. I'll explain this in the wrong order. Well, doesn't really matter. So number 40, when it can detach one to put tokens on every string tokens on every monster on the board, and then when you rank up, you destroy every monster with string tokens, and then you inflict life point damage to your opponent equal to the monster with the highest attack of those destroyed, and then you can draw a card. So it kind of replaces your rank up spell, and it also means you can swing in with strings, rank up, inflict some battle damage, and then swing in with dark strings because the rank up spell is a quick play. Which, you know, if your opponent's got a 2/4 monster on board as well as something else that strings can get over, or you can see where you might be able to put 8,000 points of damage on board. The trouble is it doesn't really happen that often. So new stuff, the link stuff. So there's 2 of the Gimmick Puppet Link Monster. So during your main phase, if you control only this Link Summon card, you can activate it, and you can either dump a Gimmick Puppet or add it to your hand. If you only control Gimmick Puppets at that point, you can then special summon a Gimmick Puppet from your hand. And again, he can be a little bit hard to use in terms of he's not really that good going first unless you go to the Orcust link, and even then it's not exactly amazing. But he's such a good enabler, you know, and a play starter that you kind of need to run him. And you could run one, so you could definitely cut it. And I've had builds where I have cut it out, but I think he's deserving of a second slot. And then you've got Needle Fiber, or the new spelling of it, which I can't pronounce. So Link summon from summon Link Monster from your deck, which will be probably another one of the drivers. And he's basically just a really good card. He is quite expensive at the moment, especially for a Gimmick Puppet deck, but there isn't really a replacement from what I've found. And then finally, there's the new Mecha Phantom Beast. So you're using Halafibrax to get into Auroradon. So what Auroradon does, it can contribute up to, well, when it's Link summoned, it summons 3 tokens, and then it contributes up to 3 monsters to do certain effects. First one's a destroy a card on the field, so it can be useful going a second, sorry, should I say. Tribute 2 to special summon Mecha Phantom Beast from your deck, which is going to be your O-Lion. And then Tribute 3 to add a trap card from your graveyard to your hand, which again probably isn't coming up anytime soon, but we are running the impermanences, at least in this build, to add them back if we were absolutely desperate for it. So yeah, so that's the deck. I'll show you the kind of one card combo that can kind of at least set up some sort of board at the end. Okay, so the totally Gimmick Puppet one card combo is normal summon of your Righty Driver. I'm going to be a bit close here, but this will be a normal summon. We then special summon our Lefty Driver from our deck. We activate Lefty Driver's effect to make it level 3, obviously. We'll then link those two. The graveyard's going to be off camera. To go into Needle Fiber. Needle Fiber special summons another Righty Driver from deck. We can then link those two off into our Auroradon. Auroradon then special summons 3 of our tokens. We then tribute 2 of those tokens off to summon our O-Lion. You then synchro the O-Lion and the token for an Accel Synchron. O-Lion's effect activates in the graveyard, special summoning another token, and then we can then synchro those 2 off for the Savage Dragon, which then equips the Halafruit backs to give it 2 negates and 3/7 attack. So you've got a negate on board, and you've got a pop for next turn should you need it. I have mucked around with Jet Synchron, so instead of special summoning the Righty Driver with the Needle Fiber, you instead use Jet Synchron, which you can then special summon back. You end up losing the Auroradon because you'll end up going to Herald of the Arc Lights, which gives you an extra negate and some Macrocosmos-esque effects, but I kind of feel like you're better leaving the Auroradon. I'm kind of not 100% decided, but I think that from my testing, leaving the Auroradon feels like the better play. So yeah, so that's kind of everything. Thanks for watching this totally Gimmick Puppet combo, and give us a like if you enjoyed the video.